Welcome to today's episode of TalkingTons, a podcast by CDE. I'm your host, Lauren McMaster, part of the marketing team here at CDE, and I'm joined by some of the experts from our CustomCare team. First up, we have Jonathan Crooks. He's our IT manager and has been with CDE for 9 years now. He focuses on the transformation of CDE's IT landscape, touching on all aspects from infrastructure and security to the selection of IT systems that we use today. And next up, we have Duncan Wright, our technical engineer, who's been with CDE for 5 years. He started his journey as in a graduate role in 2022 and moved across the technical innovation team, working to enhance digitalization of our plants and analysing the data capture from IoT sensors and instrumentation. And finally, we have Norman Kane, head of CustomCare. As a chartered engineer, he's experience ranging from practical hands-on equipment installation and design through to complex process operations. Thanks everyone for joining me today. We're going to explore digitalization to automate plant management to maximize wash plant efficiency. So at CDE, we've had 30 years experience developing the washing technology, but over the last 5 years, we've really focused on also developing the technology to support plant management and optimization. How has this landscape changed over time? This was maybe a good place to start.
I'd say if you even go back to the very beginning, it's probably just before 5 years ago, we started off with a small proof of concept. SmartTech V1 we would have called it. We had a handful of customers, we had 15 to 20 customers online at that point. Very much taking some simpler data from certain sensors on the plants. But if you fast forward now to where we're at today, we're now on a cloud-based platform that is built for scale, and we're getting much more data, much more different sensors, more sensors, and we can do a lot more with the data now and better insights as well. So that's just from the IoT side of things. It's technically industrial Internet of Things is what we're using. That's pretty much the heart of our SmartTech platform, is that IoT side of things, which is actually getting the data in the first place. And then we've obviously got our other parts, our checklist software and the 3D part ordering systems as well. So you guys would probably see more from the customer side as well and the technical side.
I suppose a big thing, like even for me, Johnny, in terms of that customer side, and maybe a little bit before we get into that, how we went from like that initial rollout of the, like the first version of it, or even more to the cloud based, was ease of access, getting something that's easy for customers to utilize, get access to the information that the plant is actually telling us. And that was probably a big driving force on what we did, but also I suppose for me as a process engineer, understanding right, what can we actually do with the information, what's known in the plant, what type of process control, process knowledge can we harvest, capture and bring out, and using the various systems to access the information, like as you mentioned earlier, that are kind of cloud-based computing systems. We've also kind of built on that with like the phone app, which is using some of that data, but on a more, kind of local platform on both iPhone and Android, so the customers quick access. But it's about knowing what the plant's doing in the now, also combined with using that historical information to build and predict and get a better handle of what the plant's likely to do in the future. And I suppose looking even at the whole thing from a customer's perspective, what is it they want to do? Ultimately, all our customers are in the business of producing some form of sand and aggregate that they can sell to make money. And efficiency, uptime optimization, taking them kind of manufacturing philosophies and building that into a wash plant. And that's certainly something I think even from like a technical standpoint, that has been a big thing that we've seen change even from like an engineering side. Duncan, like what have you kind of seen maybe over the last little while, and changes and things that having data could help us to understand and develop?
Yeah, so I sort of, when I first joined CE, I remember visiting sites, and you go to a site and you'd see the customer would have a whiteboard or a notebook out detailing what their daily tonnage is, what power they've consumed, what their water usage is. But with the use of this IoT data and having the data on hand, they can make these decisions, record the data automatically, not have to worry about recording this information, and then management can ultimately make data-driven decisions based on that information to really optimize the process, optimize their power usage, their water usage, and then that all ties into how they can really build a sustainable model going forward. Because in times gone by, there was no real visibility for the customer as to what the process is doing. They couldn't really measure if it was metrics to determine, is the plant running well, is it running efficiently? Whereas now they can look at that and see and make decisions based on the data that they do have. As you say, the historical data is very useful to really optimize the process and learn the process over time.
I'd say a big thing as well over the past 5 years is probably the adoption of the technology, not even just for CE, but that IoT side of things has become a lot more mainstream in terms of, anything out there, any piece of technology, people, expect to be able to see how that's performing, and with it, as easy as picking up your phone and seeing it remotely from anywhere in the world type thing. So I'd say that's probably one of the biggest things over the 5 years is the adoption of the technology itself. And you'd be a key person to say that from CDE side of things, you've seen be a big part of the adoption of the platform over the past 2 years.
Yeah, from the business perspective, that we started with the new cloud-based system towards the end of 22 with one plant online. We're now sitting here now with 104, 105 plants in various sizes, right through from a full-blown, very complex recycling plants with multiple process steps, filter presses, all a real kind of high-end wash plant technology, right down to some much more kind of simpler plants where customers are simply wanting to know and understand, is my plant performing, what's my run hours. Probably in doing that big spectrum, big thing that the cloud-based system has gave us the flexibility to handle not only that in terms of the scale of the plant and the scale of the information, but also the adaptability of the system to work with various control systems. Like being a global business, we tend to stick with a couple of main manufacturers, but we do have to, in certain regions and certain customers, work with their kind of set suppliers. So there's various kind of PLC manufacturers out there. Like if the big 2 or 3, like the Siemens, the Allen Bradleys, the Mitsubishis that are generally there. And the big thing for me was making sure that whatever systems we were working with that adaptability to connect to them, and certainly that's in the solution that we're working with, we've got that ability. It is something probably even looking at and understanding going forward, how we actually go the adaptability and the interconnection, probably more in in that IT space, the cloud space, how the systems all talk, I suppose, is to as much the hardware. Yeah. But even the simple challenges again, and interacting with their hardware on the plants. So whenever we're specifying sensors or we're doing something, that we make sure that we're getting the compatibility there, that there is data, there is information that we can actually make something of for the benefit of the customer.
You've probably seen as well the speed of the onboarding of new customers as well, like how much that's changed over the past 3 years, even from the older system to what we're doing today.
And probably, again, it's down to that flexibility. It's down to that ability that Duncan and I can take something basically out of a box, program it, set it up, get it running. We're not having to be, experienced computer programmers. Yeah. Like the system for built. We grab it, they've got the functions, it's like opening your toolbox. You're going to do better made this new car, you get different tools you can pick. The challenge for us is picking the right tool and having something that kind of works, getting that information in a format that makes sense both to us, both in terms of, I suppose, commercial, that kind of 3-bit production side of it, but also not forgetting like the technical element, the engineering, the art of what we do, process engineering. So knowing and understanding what's going on, helping our developing team, and that's maybe a good point. I'm going to bring yourself back in, like in terms of like the development projects that we've done over the last couple of years, is there anything that you've seen, that being able to remotely monitor and understand and help you guys from that kind of end to do things in a more kind of like efficient and controlled manner?
Yeah, so with the ability to track the historical data of all the sensors and new technologies that we're implementing on our sites, we can then use that data to essentially prove to the customers that we've trialed this sensor, it's give us this data, and that proves that it is fit for purpose. So even with our products that have had for many, many years, we can utilize the data, as you say, across over 100 plants. We can utilize that data and benchmark it against other products and other customers, and maybe see a trend of why is this customer outperforming in this customer, and we can then decide is there ways we can optimize this plant or optimize this product. So it sort of helps the continual improvement of existing products and even the implementation of new products and technologies that we can look into or we can trial it and sort of prove to the customer that yes, it does work, and we have that historical data to prove that point.
You kind of touched on something there, and it was maybe something I missed in my previous. There's just being able to use the technology in older plants. It's not just about what we're building and selling through your Cookstown and Monkstown facility. It's about those older, the plants that have been out, the 10, 15-year-old plants that are still working away, they're still important. So within that, group of 100, we do have like a full spread of brand new plants right through the ones that are in that 10 to 15-year-old. Probably the challenge with them was at the time that they were being built, people didn't foresee the level of data collection, data harvesting. So we didn't have like the same type of technology, the same type of sensors on the plants. So there's been a little bit more of a challenge in working with them, retrofitting on belt scales, pressure sensors, flow sensors. But a big bit of the mantra and a big bit that we tried to do is use what the technical team are putting on, not to overload the plant with complexity in terms of the sensors and the information that we want. Use what's there, use what's in and at the heart of the control system to bring that and make use and make sense of that, so we don't turn it from a robust, kind of very easy to own, operate and maintain wash plant to something that, in trying to make it clever, it becomes such a maintenance burden. And it's all them thinking. I would say even for yourselves, only like an IT and a support background as well. We don't want anything that's too cumbersome. And
That's it. It has to make sense to do it in the first place. What you're saying there, pretty much, the plant has a sensor, has a PLC. We can get the data. At the end of the day, that's where it's all coming down to. Again, I'd say another big piece of the past 5 years, I'll just touch on it briefly, has been cybersecurity as well. Everybody's aware, probably more so over the past 5 years than previous, how important cybersecurity is to any piece of software, hardware, anything in IT. Pretty much pick up anything on the news. You'll see articles on the latest attacks and stuff like that. So, and what vendors and suppliers are doing to combat that as well. So, one of the key things we have looked at, especially for the latter version, the SmartTech that we're on today, and on the IoT side of things, it's making sure that it's went through those testing, the penetration testing. The platform itself that we chose is ISO 27001 certified, which speaks for itself. But that's just become so much more important than it was even 5 years ago. Those conversations maybe wouldn't even have been had. You would said, "There's the functionality, I want that." Whereas now it's like, right, actually, how secure is this platform? Because the data behind it is important, and we need to make sure that's secure. So,
and it certainly is, and that's something that we'll be hearing more and more from customers. And again, our customer base is everything from the smaller independent operator right through to the large global PLCs, and every one of them's every bit as important as the other. The bit you'll maybe find that the larger companies, the bigger PLCs, have got like their own IT groups, their own kind of systems within their business. They're very IT and data secure. Like they have a lot of knowledge and understanding. So there's always been questions that kind of work with them as to how do we protect the information, but also kind of protect that in terms of a gateway through the data capture device or anything that we're doing into their platform. So we've, in choosing and using kind of high-end, high-security platforms, like we've been able to reassure them. In fact, actually, we've got a good example of one customer who was a little bit hesitant on that side of it to explain to them, but the other thing that really kind of triggered them to use and adopt the system was they've quite a complex recycling facility that is, off the top of my head, 13 belt weighers. At the end of each shift, their plant supervisor was going around and independently recording the information from each of them belt weighers in quite inaccessible locations in some points. Everything easy when you're at the point, but you're walking up and down the plant, you're getting around, 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes at the end of every day. I showed them that if we harvest that data and bring it in, it's there. We can automatically report on it. You don't even have to send the guy out. So that 15, 20 minutes, if he was doing that at the end of the shift, he could be doing more of a maintenance walk around, more of a thing to build and maintain, and ensure that the plant is operating at its best. And as simple as that sounds, you take 20 minutes of somebody's time across a full kind of washing season for that particular customer will be 8 months. That's a chunk of time that we're saving. That's I suppose like an example of something that we're doing on the ground and making an impact of just capturing that production data at the end of the day, bundling up into an Excel or some form of report, or indeed just having it on a graphical display that they can very quickly write down and record, and do that every day. It very, very quickly adds up.
So that's probably a key thing that all the platforms, if you want to pick a word, it's probably efficiency, really, at the end of the day. What the platform is giving you in terms of functionality and what it's actually taken away from manual tasks. It's all about efficiency, really, isn't it?
And I suppose efficiency, but then looking at getting into better prediction, better prevention. We want to kind of stay ahead of the plant, start to learn, start to understand, build in that little bit of intelligence without going, fully down the whole machine learning and AI type thing, but just getting and understanding trends. And again, certainly that, and from your experience and capturing a lot of that information and bringing it into different systems, the likes of Power BI and other kind of complementary tools that we'll have. Like, what's your sort of thoughts and feelings in our ability to capture that and start to predict and understand plant trends?
Yeah, so it's sort of alluded to earlier, with maybe over 100 plants currently bringing us data back. So as you can imagine, it's a huge pool of data. So really, what I did was try to analyze the data and aggregate it so that we get the very useful insights and we can draw conclusions sort of regionally with our customers. So maybe even we can see that the customers based in Europe or America might run much less in the winter months compared to the UK and the Middle East, but we can then draw comparisons to reasons behind that, and it's obviously weather-based because of the harsh conditions. As you're talking about in terms of efficiency, we can then benchmark one customer against another to see this plant is essentially the same plant, but this customer might be getting 20% more tonnage per day, or they might be using 10% less water. So we can look at what they're doing differently and then apply those differences to other customers, and really, it's really taking CDE from a product supplier to more of a strategic partner, so we can be on that journey with them, because the data they see is the data we will see, so we can even harvest that data and also use it to help them with remote diagnostics. But all the guys in your team would use that data, and it says you haven't actually go on site to physically be there to explain to them that the reason your production is dropping off at this point is because of you're feeding the plant too much at this point, or the other reason as to why the plant may be struggling.
Yeah, and we probably a couple of good examples of that. One, without getting into the actual kind of detail of the part of the plant, but we did pick up a trend on customer fab where they'd see a CE unit. So when we printer filled with the classifying unit, we'd noticed that over the last 2 to 3 days, it had started to kind of trend down in terms of its performance of the bed depth, the valves open and closing, key process things had changed from how it was operating for like the previous 2 to 3 weeks. And once we get these things set up and running, like our processes are relatively stable, providing you don't have, changes in material, change something. This was a very stable process. But we picked up on that. We were able to call the customer and have a discussion with them, make them aware. I think probably one of their night shifts a couple of shifts ago would realise there was something potentially happening, but they hadn't fully flagged it. So we actually, within a couple of days then, worked with them, got the process back on track, turned around again, and they were back up to kind of full production through that part of the plant within like a matter of days, whereas typically something like that might trend on for 2 or 3 weeks till they get the full production data information through. Maybe another kind of example like to that is that if we're pulling a total production report for each day, graphing that on a weekly basis, you have a good benchmark for each week. What is the average production through the plant? And then you start to see that trending down, which again, with a couple of customers that have done that and seen it, and it's prompting the questions then. It's not necessarily going and that complex is going into the exact heart of what the problem is. It's highlighting to say that there's something different.
Flag the difference.
It's flagging the difference, and it's how you then work with them to kind of understand what that difference is.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of, supposed to then coming to you even with an issue or not on the plant as well as it could be. We can see that data. We can see that the last week this customer, his performance has dropped by, for example, 50%. We can reach out to them and really ask a question: is this related to a CDE product or a plant item, or is it actually because maybe the demand for your product's reduced, or it's a holiday season that you're at that period of time? So they can really sort of gives us the initiative to go out and reach out to them, and if it is an issue, we can then rectify it quickly and really try and ramp up their process again because the requirements.
And I think that's it, is about building that kind of true partnership thing where we are working in conjunction with them. Like, probably then the next step is to do that manually, to have the engineering team to sit, monitor a continually growing amount of customers. That's where it starts to become difficult. So the next level then is getting into a little bit of automation in the background in terms of analysing, tracking and monitoring that data.
That's definitely the next thing. I suppose we've done that initial proof of concept of what we're calling a preventative maintenance at this stage, which is very much, we've got the data there, we can spot the anomaly. But it's actually setting it up for automation now to flag our custom care team and even the customer as well. And we can start to integrate that with our other platforms, other SmartTech platforms too, like the checklist software that we have as well. So once that anomaly is spotted, it will flag to our CRM platform. It will also flag to the checklist platform that the customer can say and can go and see that alert and know what to check, essentially what checks they need to do for that issue.
Yeah, I suppose that kind of maybe is a fair point. Like, we focus very much here in the first 15 minutes of the conversation about the data, but there's data in other forms. Like, we do hold information in terms of like preventative maintenance checks, so daily, weekly, monthly checked. We've got a 3D parts platform, which again allows the customer that ability to go in. It's a true replication of the 3D model, drill down, pick the part that you want to do. What we are working on is how do we make that even more clever and the interactions between them. Like, the ultimate dream for this thing would be, or this type technology in general, is about finding the fault before the fault has happened.
Yeah.
So if we could get that engine behind it, that it's analysing the data in the background, finding there's a fault, understanding really that that's a particular part. So it's going from like the control and the process side of it, going selecting the part we need, automatically ordering that part through the system, and then also linking that to our like preventative maintenance area where we can then provide either our own service teams or some of our customers that are well supported and indeed internally. So we're actually picking up and understanding the fault before it generally usually manifests itself in something either breaking, overheating, or the reason for at some point you have to stop the plant.
I suppose, yeah, that's where like some machine learning would come in, where obviously you've over 100 plants online, you can't have someone sitting looking at a graph continually to say, oh, there's an anomaly, whereas when you do have those consistent trends, you can then implement machine learning to catch those anomalies quickly, and then then send an automated alert, and then you can action that before it sort of exacerbates itself, gets to the point where it's causing a plant shutdown, and then you have the whole issue of reduced efficiency for the plant. So all these future technologies.
Absolutely, and it's not even the future. It's there. It's just a matter of how we adopt that into the platform. That's more your predictive maintenance type stuff, where it's using your machine learning and AI in the background.
Yeah.
I know AI is obviously a big term over the past probably 24 months, but that is there. It's very much part of it. Where your preventative stuff does still require, our team to be able to set those levels of before it becomes an anomaly. But the predictive maintenance actually has that range you were saying, machine learning, that can actually learn through the historic data and can spot that stuff for itself. And that's true automation. Then it's very, very little human intervention at that point.
Does that reduce the safety benefit by reducing that human intervention and reducing the amount of breakdowns and the amount of times you're having to walk and check certain elements of the plant? Is that
absolutely? Well, it's taking humans out of that part of the process, I suppose. So absolutely would be, yeah.
And that probably is a big thing, Lauren. Like, customers now don't have the same scale and level of maintenance teams. Like, typically most of our sites are being run by site supervisor, maybe a plant manager, one or two, operators on plant and equipment, and then maybe on a weekly basis they're bringing somebody in to do a bit more on the maintenance side. So the more that we can help and steer them and guide them and bring those issues to the fore, like the old, dare I say and sit here, that the more old-fashioned method of doing something, of going out, cleaning, listening, inspecting, seeing, hearing, that takes quite a bit of manpower. And if we can take that out, even just in terms of that efficiency, but yes, indeed the safety, because some of our plants are in some quite harsh environments, when it's kind of getting towards 40, 50 degrees outside. You don't want somebody heading up, up and down stairs, checking, taking temperatures of things. If you can do that, automatically bring that data back to the central hub. But I suppose what it is, it's not about fully replacing them either, because there is times where you do need that human interaction and that involvement to fully understand what's happening.
Exactly. Yeah. So even looking towards the future as well, and other things that we could be doing, we're talking about the predictive maintenance type stuff, and the machine learning, even more data, more sensors, all that kind of good stuff as well. One thing we're actually using the platform for ourselves over the next 12 months, we're looking to do digital factory using SmartTech as well. So it's putting the software to the test. Essentially, we'll see it for ourselves, and that's essentially what we want to do, and get that data. Fast forward 12 months time, we'll understand how efficient our manufacturing facilities is running, and if there's any ways we can improve that as well. So essentially at the end of it, we're maybe getting our OE data, and that's what we'll be trying to improve on. So as well, we'll be picking up on certain downtimes. So that's something we're not doing right now, and something we could look at is being able to actually flag and log the downtime reasons of why the plant's not running. And that's something we can do in the digital factory world and in the customer space as well, potentially. And over that period of time, you could start to pick up those trends. Well, this is actually our biggest issue that we have. That's something we need to focus on to improve efficiency on the machines. So
I think that's got huge potential. I don't know about yourself, Duncan, from an engineering and a development, but actually having that full knowledge and understanding. We've done a little bit unique how we've done it in CDE. Most people adopt this type of technology in their factories and what they're doing in their production side of it. We've very much gone the other way around. Like, we strapped it onto our plants in the field. So now what we're talking about doing is bringing it down to understanding what where manufacturing facilities are running and operate. But actually tying that together has to have huge benefit and understanding in what's going on, and can we make them a more efficient, better plant? Because at the end of the day, what we're all about here is making the ownership of these plants, like the ownership and the running of them, as easy as we can for the customer.
Yeah. This tool really goes, well, we kind of start this conversation, I just think this is a tool that helps the operator, it helps the site manager, but it's much more than that. The entire business, and I couldn't imagine across all departments in a business they would create that shouldn't happen that bad.
And that's probably a big challenge for us because like you're sitting with two process engineers and an IT engineer, and we tend to focus on what's going on in the plant, which is good. But a big thing I've learned and the big thing I found over the 2 years, and it's probably even through maybe my growth and development and CDE and moving into slightly different roles, is that the more business oriented people that I'm talking to, it's becoming a very, very powerful tool, and that indeed even from a manufacturing side. And
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, the IoT side of things has, if you look at any digital transformation strategy over the past 5 years, IoT has been right up there in the top 2-3 things, especially in manufacturing. That's just become the norm now. It's the machines are there, but now they can get the data remotely and start to understand and learn from that data as well. So, IoT is the heart of what they would call Industry 4.04. And that's essentially what we're trying to do ourselves here. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed more recently is there's a big push on sustainability for our customers, so they may have to prove to someone that they're consuming this much power, they're using this much water, or their water is this quality, or there's this contamination in the water. So they can have all this data stored based off the IoT software, and they can go to this person and have the proof there to say, our plant does meet regulations, and we are doing what we can to reduce our carbon footprint. So it all ties in with the sort of creating a sustainable future for our plant as well. And as we move on within the innovation team, we're always looking at new technologies and new sensors that we can implement to really improve and make our plants more sustainable in the future.
I think one thing would be interesting is to have this conversation again in another 5 years' time.
Yeah.
Where is this going? Because
the potential is huge.
Yeah.
We don't even know ourselves where it's going to be in 5 years' time. It's hard enough to tell where it's going to be in 3 years' time, let alone 5. So yeah, we should do that. We should put that in the diaries. Make sure we do that.
Just and it's a big kind of getting that understanding that even for us is very hard to, if you could predict that, we'd be going and trying to make decisions now that would predict us for going forward. But it's a bit what we can do with it, but also remembering that we can create and capture a huge amount of information, way more than anybody ever needs. And that's where kind of getting the right teams involved and understanding and just focusing on the right information has been key.
Just before we wrap up, it might be useful. Is there any little piece of advice you could give for somebody who was thinking about adopting technology? Where should they start, or how would you go about?
I suppose from kind of my involvement, my perspective, I've done everything from implement it from a technology standpoint to sit and talking with customer development, understand what the business need is, what is it that you really want to get out of it, because there's different ways that we can channel the information. If it is from, business perspective and understanding your throughput, understanding your performance, indeed that OEE function, overall equipment effectiveness, we can look at within our wash plants. If that's key to it, then it's understanding, right, what hardware have we got on the plant? Have you got enough built wares? Have you got the stuff there that's going to give you the information that you need? Maybe something we've seen in retrofitting it is that we've been a bit quick to just jump in and fit it. And then we've sat down and realised, look, yes, we get data, but we're not getting specifically what the customer wants. So for me, that probably is the first thing.
Put the time into the planning. It's not teaching things.
Understand what it is you want from it, and then the flexibility of the system then kind of starts then to come to allow us to build something around their needs rather than just being a very kind of technical side, and that's maybe more from like from an engineering and a technical side. Duncan, what would your thoughts be there in scoping something out?
Well, I think a lot of customers, when they first hear SmartTech or digitalization, they think we need to have a plant with all the bells and whistles, all the sensors, all the beltwares. But in reality, if you have one beltware on your feed conveyor and you have your run signals and your pulse signals, you can then have an OEE, as Norman alluded to, which will tell you exactly how well your plant is being utilized. And then you can identify, are we feeding the plant as well as we could? Because if you don't have a feed beltware, it's essentially like driving a car with no speedometer. You don't know what your plant's doing. you're just basing it off estimates and can't really run a sustainable operation. So I'd really say you don't really need to have everything there. Even if one beltway or a small amount of data can really prove very useful in the long run.
So from my point of view, the technology is there, and it's like we're living it now. So it's just a matter of how you want to adopt that. As Norman alluded to, it's find your business requirement for it in the first place. But there's many there, and we've got many examples of why you would do it. But it's a big part of any digital transformation journey. Like IoT is the heart of what we're doing here, but that is right up there in the top on one or two things.
Thanks so much for your time today. It's really interesting to learn a bit more about the topic. To watch the next episode of our podcast, visit the website at cdegroup.com/talkingtons.